Jack Gibson is one of Australia's great, authentic characters. He was a highly successful coach, and he remains a true authority on the game. His dry, laconic sense of humour belies the great passion that he feels for the game. In both sport and in life, Jack Gibson has indeed played strong, done fine.
Jack Gibson is one of Australia's finest sporting coaches. A rugby league legend, his philosophies cross many boundaries, into business, into all sports and into life. This video is about those philosophies and is based on his best-selling book, Played Strong, Done Fine. By his own stern judgment, he was a player of no great ability. Yet today, Jack Gibson is acknowledged as a towering figure in the game he chose, rugby league, and in the sporting world generally. He coached with integrity and single-minded pride and won 5 Sydney Rugby League premierships, 2 with Eastern Suburbs and 3 with Parramatta. The messages that follow in this profile on a great coach translate as well to life and its challenges as they do to football. They're the collected thoughts and inspirations of a man who's spent 20 years in the business of coaching and been a winner. As with Jack's book, this video is dedicated to his son Luke, who died in early 1988, and the proceeds are to be used for research into the causes and treatment of schizophrenia. Jack Gibson shares with us also the wit and wisdom of those who've inspired him over the years and conveys basic success messages of his own in his acutely perceptive manner. Jack's stage was the football arena, but much of what he has to say is about life itself. He tells his footballers to set their sights high, but to be prepared to pay the price of hard work and dedication to get there. Life too is like that, says Big Jack.
I don't believe that you can train 24 hours a day and become a good sportsman if that's not your go. You know, it doesn't matter. You're never going to make the team. But if you show some, if you got some ability at it, and start to train and go to the lengths necessary, you know, you certainly will improve. If I get a kid that starts to improve, and I'll keep him in that team all the time. If he shows me a little improvement each Sunday, because I don't know where he's going to stop. So he might eventually go all the way.
Gibson was hooked on sport from an early age. A gifted cricketer and a rising rugby league forward with Sydney's Eastern Suburbs, he learnt to enjoy the struggle and the pressures of sport. He played first grade for Easts and Wests, and although he now plays down his football talent, the fact is he was good enough and tough enough to play for New South Wales against Queensland. He became a coach in 1967 and took an ailing Eastern Suburbs from last place to the semi-finals. That achievement remains one of the great feats of modern coaching. His reputation grew rapidly. Clubs sought his services and Gibson moved around, happy to impart his knowledge. He coached 6 clubs: East, St George, Newtown, Souths, Parramatta and Cronulla. Throughout the years, if he didn't win a premiership, well, he was never too far away. Yet, for all the pressures of modern football, Jack Gibson never allowed it to intrude too far into his family life. Jack and his wife Judy raised 6 children in Sydney's picturesque Cronulla area. Meanwhile, Jack's coaching career and reputation grew and grew. Gibson, throughout his life, had realised the value and the lessons of sport. Youngsters needed to enjoy what they were doing and to grow personally through their sport, and he preached those messages. Gibson watched sportsmen such as John McEnroe and was appalled.
Talk to you, and you're not going to be able to do nothing about it, because I'm not going to say anything that's going to be able to make some baloney-head decision. You know that? Anymore, I really wouldn't. It's not worth it for me. I don't have to play.
In McEnroe, he saw no enjoyment factor, and the example McEnroe set for youngsters disturbed him greatly.
But he's got the talent, but it didn't happen overnight, a thing like that. He gradually got worse, and he was never checked, and it was allowed, and they'd find him, he'd be earning a couple of $1 million a year, and they find him $2 or $3 grand, you know, which wasn't even a fine at all. He was crying out for some discipline in his younger days. You know, he was a champion player, and no one gave him it. He was looking for it. No one helped him down the road on that. They just let it go along. I don't blame McEnroe. I blame the people that accepted it. It must have retarded his ability to play the game if he's carrying that on his shoulder. You know, the tantrums and the bad discipline he showed towards the sport. He didn't respect the game. If he should have been taught to respect the game a little more, and he wouldn't have went in the way he did. And people got used to it, you know, and then all of a sudden it was expected of him. And now he's out of reach. But
what would you do if you had a boy like John McEnroe and you saw him behaving like that as a kid?
I'd ask him to change his name, I think.
That same win-at-all-cost syndrome can be seen out on the parks and fields every weekend when the little leagues are in action. Some parents and coaches know how to handle it. Many don't, to the detriment of kids. The message is simple, says Jack. Let the kids enjoy themselves.
Surprising how high they put the crossbar for the kid, and when they're under pressure, how low they want it for themselves.
What do you tell those parents when you can see they're getting in the way? You're nice
Well, there's
to them,
not
or
much you can. But I've seen this, if you say we've got a coach with some kids and the coach is all right. You know, the coach is low profile and appreciates the kids and he's not mouthing off and over coaching, you know, and keeps his counsel and keeps quiet. If the parents watch, they've got a tendency to do that. But if you've got a loud-mouthed coach run up and down the sideline, that encourages the parents. The next minute he's got 20 parents tailing on behind him. So the coach is a great influence on the family, and I think the first job of the coach is to coach the family and let the kids look after themselves. If he can do that, he's going to be very successful. I think that's a major issue, but the kid must find consolence in the coach. If he's had a poor game and the coach can't put his arm around the kid and say, hey, don't let it bug you, you worked away, done a lot of good things there, and pick out the pluses. But if the coach gives him a rattle up, by the time he gets into the car, he's had a kick in the backside from his parents. You know, of course, they've embarrassed the parents, played poorly. You know, first day that kid's getting an opportunity to do anything in life, he's going to leave sport. He don't want to put himself in that situation ever and ever again. It's too embarrassing, too tough for him. You know, he might be 8 years old.
While youngsters are playing sport and enjoying it, they will learn soon enough important values in life, the acceptance of winning and the acceptance of failure. They will learn that to have done their best is all that anyone can ask of them, as this quote from heavyweight boxing champ Joe Frazier underlines. If I lose, I will walk away and never feel bad because I did all I could. There was nothing more to do. In boxing, as in life, the failures almost always are those fighters who haven't worked hard enough to reach their potential. It's something that Gibson has emphasised throughout his coaching career.
I expect them, if they can do their best, they can, you know, play to their potential. You know, I couldn't give a bloke a high accolade and say you played your best. You know, you've done your best, there's nothing after that, is there? You can't say you played beyond your best. Because he's reached a new level. That's striving to get better in what you do. The coach gets his kick from probably getting a player. He's showed no real ability, but while you've been with him, he's risen. You know, you start to lean on that. You're a part of that. You're a part of his success. And you get to feel him, hey, I helped this bloke to succeed a little. And probably in reverse, too, if you get a good player, and you're with him for some time and he starts to decline, you've got to think I might have been in that. I've been hanging on to him there somewhere too.
Gibson in later years looked back and doubted that he'd gone close to reaching his own full potential as a football player. But he remembers and regrets too one occasion early in his career when his coach at the time gave him the wrong advice.
Well, I had a couple of hurdles to face. I remember one particular game I was playing, I had a problem. And the coach tried to make it disappear for me by saying it didn't exist. But it did exist in my mind, so I thought, well, I must be very weak. It took my confidence in this area. He didn't understand enough about the job he'd given me. He couldn't coach.
Gibson came to understand that if you're going to make a mistake in life or in sport, make it at full speed. It's about being positive, and Gibson's message on that is clear.
Well, you've got to ask them to make a commitment, what they're going to do on Sunday for you. What are you prepared to do on Sunday if I start you? And if they make a commitment and they don't even come close to it, well, hey, you know, you've got to put somebody else in there. But if they try to do something about what they said they could do, you know, even if it's a certain amount of tackles in one half, or maybe it's a mistake rate.
Lovely Catters holding Coney's touch. Bracken coming out after Larkado can't make it, I don't think, and Larkado may have just beaten Finetza Bell.
There are some people who'll always be losers. You can see them at any racetrack. They're the ones with the hard luck stories.
Well, they associate with losers. You know, they get the tips off losers. They don't want to listen to somebody that's lost. As a matter of fact, they feel, if they win, they feel uncomfortable because they always work out, well, they should have won more. They spend the whole meeting propping themselves up with excuses why they could have backed the winner. You know, everyone will work out a system that goes to the races. Doesn't matter what horse wins, they start thinking, gee whiz, I could have backed that thing. You know, if I'd have been a little smart, I'd have backed that. And when they eventually back a winner, they keep saying, gee, I had $10 on that. I was going to have 50 on it. Why I didn't have 50? But they're never happy.
And if you want to find a truly gloomy place, just walk into any loser's dressing room with its long faces and slumped figures of defeat. And if there's another telltale sign, it's the loneliness of the place. No backslappers, no hangers-on.
Well, that's how it should be. When you get beat, you don't want to be shaking hands with anybody and listen to that old crap, you know, tough luck. You'll do it next year, wait till next week. You know, you're unlucky. You don't want to listen to that. Yeah, I don't care if the dressing rooms are full when we win. And I certainly prefer it empty when we lose. But that's part of the sports scene, and that's how it is. And a lot of people don't come in your dressing room because when you get beat because they feel uncomfortable. And it's a mark of respect for you. But I remember one president I listened to in Queensland once, he said, I never, he said, ever could go into the dressing room when they win. He said, I bet I'm always there when they lose. I was thinking they'd be sick of the sight of you then, brother.
You've got to think about losing, you know, but you're not a bad loser.
Well, it's how you lose. You know, if the game's shot away through discipline or some damn stupid thing, you know, you do it tough. But if your team's play to its ability, you know, it's not going to make you real happy because the only way to make anybody happy is to win. You know, you're not there to entertain. You're there to win.
If failure is something that sits uncomfortably with Jack Gibson, and it does, it's also true that Jack has never lost sight of the fact that there's a great deal of fun to be had from sports. He gave players that licence to enjoy themselves, and very many of them responded to it, like big Bob the Bear O'Reilly, a likeable rogue and an outstanding international forward who played with Parramatta in the 70s and the 80s. O'Reilly related to Jack's special kind of humour, and he told him one day in the 1981 season, "My goal this year is to score 20 tries. Counting training sessions, I'm up to 10 already, one in a game." Did he ever get his second?
He'd score for you. He put the others in a position to score. But he's an extraordinarily confident player. He's big attraction. The players like to play with him. He had a lot of attractions in that area. They really want to play with Bob, and he could get the job done. He's probably everyone thought he was a very good player. I thought he was a great player. And the players that played with him and against him probably put him on a higher level than most. No, he's great.
Gibson in the 1980s took his dust-dry wit into the commentary box as resident expert on Channel 9's State of Origin Rugby League coverage.
Well, he's turned something around, that Barry Gomersall. I don't know what it is. I don't know what he does between games. They might hide him in a cupboard up there, but I don't think they'll send him down here again.
He gathered a cult following of new fans who waited for some pearl of wit and wisdom, as on the night at Lang Park in Brisbane, when the capacity crowd didn't quite agree with the way things were going.
right on the halfway mark. It's to Sterling. Can't beat the tackle. The pass has gone to ground. Scooped up and knocked back, said the referee. The crowd not happy with that one. The crowd booing at the decision.
There's a little doubt there. They're going to boo all night. They'd boo Santa Claus, this crowd.
Or when Cronulla's Andrew Eddingshausen made a lightning dash into the clear in the same match.
Kick is down for Gary Jack. And he's on his own quarter. It's 10-6, Darryl.
Young Eddinghausen brings it back, and he's got some pace. Eddinghausen too, as he busts it off the middle and brings it back over the halfway line. Oh, he's got some acceleration, and Jack, you'd know all about that. Well, you can't give him much space. He's really quick, and they say he can turn the light out and get in bed before it gets dark.
Oh, he's one of the great images of the game too.
Closer to home at Cronulla, where Gibson coached for 3 years, quietly moulding a young, bright bunch of stars, the Sharks fans for a time during 1988 felt their team was heading at last for the club's first ever premiership and didn't let Gibson forget an early classic one-line observation. Waiting for Cronulla to win a grand final is like leaving the porch light on for Harold Holt. The light is still on.
Well, I'm sorry it turned out true so far this season, but I had to sign a lot of books, and I said, hey, listen, I've found Harold. Regards.
There have been times in football, as in life, when men and women have used humour to hide the fear they felt inside. Each day, in each life, little fears appear. It can happen in the course of driving the car down the road. Fear is an ever-present factor in rugby league too, as Gibson came to realise.
It's a violent game, football. And that's what people go and see. They want to relive it. They want to sit in the stand and feel it and look at that. Look at the violence happening. It's a violent game. There's no other way about it. But it's played with rules. What we've got to do in football and take out the unnecessary violence.
Acceptance of the fear factor is vital if players are going to succeed, says Jack. He made the observation once, everybody's got fear. You never know when it's going to come out. In certain situations, you'll back off. If you recognise it, you'll learn to overcome it. In football, those who are frightened, says Gibson, are easy to detect.
The one that opens his mouth a lot, they're not too confident. They're looking for something. They're trying to prop themselves up with it. The one that talks a lot, you can bet your life. The one that threatens a lot, the man who points the finger, he's frightened. He's doing it tough.
We have our first real physical contact of the game, other than the accepted version, and flags were flying down where the tackle was made on Drew Hill on an 18-yard gain. Eddie Anderson provided the hit. You go to the air again.
The violence factor in sport can be a major attraction for some fans. According to Gibson, that's a fact of sporting life.
Everyone doesn't want to see a car come down the straights, and the commentator said he's doing 300 mile an hour. You don't say, hey, give me a replay, do you? You know, but if he hits the fence, if he says, I'll give you 3 replays, you look at the 3 of them. So we're probably all negative. We're looking for an accident.
Yeah, so there's not much cop in a sport where a fella's going out to possibly kill himself.
Well, the risk of fatal injury, you know, this has a lot of attractions to people. As we said in the book name, you know, a lot of people, if they had front seats to the Vietnam War, they would have filled the joint. You know, that's the nature of the beast.
As much as it might be the nature of the beast, the major attraction for most fans, thankfully, is more positive. Much more than anything else, the fan just wants to see his team win. Some fans can't bear the pain of defeat. For some, a weekend win can be the main source of enjoyment in their life.
What the fan really wants to see first and foremost is his team win. And the second is probably they want to see a game that shows some skill. You know, but they want to see their team. They don't want they want to see their team play the game and play it tough. Now, they'll accept a loss under those circumstances, but if they go and watch their team play and they sort of throw the towel in a little bit, they feel embarrassed. They're embarrassed about that. When I was with Parramatta, they told me up there at Hardy's, one of their major sponsor, told me when Parramatta won, you know, very seldom would they have anybody off on Monday. And when they got beat, They'd have a lot of absentees.
So, in fact,
it really affects
it really
the
is
fan.
their team. They are, that
their
is
work
part of
habits.
their life.
In a lot of papers, that's the only thing they've got to cheer about. That's what's going to make them a winner. That's their life. Their football team's going to make them a winner. And they relive that through their football team. You know, when their team gets beat, you know, they want to hide. They want to, like the players play poorly, they want to hide in the cupboard. Well, the Fingham's a critic, and he wants to clap or boo at his leisure. And he's got to be allowed to do that. It's the makeup of the game. It's the nature of the game. It's the highs and lows, and they want to. That's how they can relive it through their ability to clap and to boo when they feel like it.
Like the punters that back the horse one Saturday and then blue next Saturday when it gets beat, not thinking about the extra 4 kilos or the fact that the jockey had to go outside about 6 to make his run. And
no, see, what the horses did in that situation is insulted his intelligence. You see, see, he's blaming the horse. You know, if he's smart bloke, he'd blame himself for being a dummy for backing it. But they blame it's the same as the football fan. They're going to have somebody to blame, and it's never themselves. And the punter, he never blames himself. You know, he'll blame the inefficiency of the horse or the jockey or the trainer or anyone connected with it, the strapper leading the horse around. You know, he wants to boo somebody.
The fan sees only the result, not for him the preparation or the pressures. As it is in the corporate boardroom, the mind games that players and coaches play are rarely open to public scrutiny. For Gibson, the mental attitude needed to win at football is basically the same as that needed to win at golf, a game he loves with a passion. Like all sports, golf has lessons to teach, not the least of them the single-mindedness of a man like Australia's great white shark, Greg Norman.
To me, he's a fierce competitor, and he's not satisfied unless he wins, and I appreciate that. You know, he shakes hands with the man who beats him, but he's crooked on it, and that's good. You know, he wants to win every tournament, and that's good too. You know, and he's got to put himself up there. He's a fierce competitor. He's not happy with a poor shot. He doesn't shrug his shoulder. If it's a poor shot, you can see the reaction. That's good. You know, the ones that kid don't care, you know, it's part of the scene and just walk up, you know, they faking it. Norman's not faking it. He's a champion, and he's rated the best. And he wants to be the best, and when he's not the best, he's disappointed in his performance.
It's the same story with the great American Jack Nicklaus. According to Gibson, there are numerous golfers who hit the ball as well as Nicklaus, even in Australia. But what holds them back?
Well, there's some pressure around, and they're competing. They can see people never going to make it at golf. I go out and watch kids all the time and say, well, he's a one player. He can play as good as Nicklaus, this bloke. Not a risk they can play as good as. There's plenty of golfers who can play as good as, you know, a top pro, but mentally they won't let them. They can't survive, for their brain won't let them. There's more pressure on the winner. You know, I'm not an underdog man. You know, I had somebody tip the other day on the radio. They asked a member of Parliament, who do you tip for the grand final? He said, oh, I'm tipping the underdogs. We're the underdogs, so I'm going for the underdogs. You know, my party's the underdog. And I thought, what a tragedy this man is. And I don't mind him going for the bloke, but his reasons for doing that, you know, are so hollow. See, it's tougher if you're the champion to stay on top.
The butterflies that gnaw away at the stomach and tear away at the nerves and emotions before a contest are unavoidable for most sportsmen. Gibson has observed the widely varying degrees of nervousness and tension in sportsmen for years. His is an intimate view of the player at his most vulnerable moment. Jack says that even the greatest players, such as St George Rugby League champ of the 60s and 70s, Graham Langlands, suffered severely.
No, he'd be violently sick before the game started. You know, the nervous system would take over. But there was a build-up. That didn't take away from his form. But probably the ones that do it tough are the ones that smokescreen it and tell you they're not nervous and they're not afraid and they're not worried about the problems they're going to face in a few minutes' time. You know, they're the ones that are kidding themselves, and they're the ones that seldom produce.
Who's another very nervy player you had? One of your big-name players who...
Gibson was a total mess, you know. You know, he looked like wet concrete. He'd fall to pieces. But his toughness was still there. You know, that didn't fall out. But his nervous system, he got very agitated before a game. And not many of the top players didn't have their certain ways and things about them. But they're not the, you know, they're not the confident people a lot of people think they are. They're outwardly confident. If you went into a dressing room before the game started, you know, you'll see a lot. They all do their own thing. You know, someone will lay down, someone will kick the locker, someone will do some push-ups and body presses, someone will do this, someone will do that, but they all have their own method of motivating themselves before the game starts.
It was this quote from Green Bay Packers all-time great American football coach Vince Lombardi that reinforced a basic message of big-time sport, that there is nowhere to hide for the performer. You know you never win a game unless you beat the guy in front of you. The score on the board doesn't mean a thing. That's for the fans.
What Vince is telling you there, if you haven't played well and accomplished something, even though the team's won, you're still embarrassed. It's you personally who's got to do the job.
The person who has his mind in order, who can handle the pressures, is the one most likely to succeed. It's as true in life and business as it is out on the sports field. The most basic lesson to be learned is that winning doesn't come easily, not even for someone like Jack Gibson.
Winning starts on Monday, not 10 minutes before the game, and say, I'm ready, coach. It's confidence all week long, and besides that week long, it's confidence for the month before that and the year before that. They've got to work at it. It's something you can't show them a film. People can't get motivated in a 5-minute speech before they run out in the football paddock. They're certainly not thinking what the coach said a minute ago. They're just worrying about, once you get out there, you're worrying about survival. All I tell my players is you survive yourself. You know, I don't want you worrying about any team situation. It's you. It's up to you to be the best player you're capable of. And for you to get the job done, for you to get the claps. Hey, it's my job to worry about the football team. And I don't want you to be concerned about that. Because if he can fulfill his own ego out there, he can come off there. He's realistic and honest. He comes off. He knows he's had a good football game. And I'll tell you what, if he can think that and knows that, I'll tell you one man that's helped the football team as a whole.
To win is fine, but with continued success, there's a human tendency to take life's victories for granted. Jack, who retains a healthy respect for Parramatta, the Sydney club he guided to 3 successive premierships in the 1980s, saw evidence in the 3rd year of that run that the hunger for victory had diminished slightly. The point he was making when he said, the first year we won the championship at Parramatta, we got sports jackets with identifying pockets. After winning the following year, they changed the pockets. Then, when we won 3 in a row, they offered to get them dry cleaned. American football coach Dick Motta struck a chord for all coaches when he said, you cannot find victory unless you first understand defeat.
Well, we certainly don't appreciate anything. You don't appreciate if it comes easy. There's far less appreciation. And probably we're going back to the Blazers and the Jumpers at Parramatta. Not that I got tremendous respect for Parramatta, but once the 3rd time happened, see what happens with people, they all pull together, you know, till they often reach a pinnacle or reach a peak or accomplish something, and then they start to fade and weaken.
If, as Gibson says, winning is reserved for people with goals and ideals who are prepared to pay the price, then we can take it as read that he too has paid his price. He looks for no excuses in defeat and no sympathy. Sometimes that's made life difficult for media men awaiting a pearl of Gibson wisdom in a dressing room after a game. As with the news of the day, Gibson takes the good with the bad. But that doesn't mean he has to like it.
Normally in our press, if you cut a player that's been there for a long time, you know, they'll say, so-and-so dropped. And underneath that in small print is, Mike Gibson makes the team. So they really work on the negatives more than the positives. See, to me, the headline should have been Mike Gibson makes first grade. He replaces so-and-so, but they don't work like that. Bad news gets the biggest, all the ink.
What about the sports writers? You got time for some and not for others?
Well, there's a few I've crossed off the list, but over the years I've been in it, well over 20 years, there's not many, very, very few. You know, I feel very confident with 95% of them.
Why do you cross them off the list? Not because their opinions are different.
Well, I don't trust them.
You don't trust them?
No, I think they're trying to work something out of their own brain. You know, they don't report the facts. But then again, I think we've got some pretty good people here too. I think better than good. I like to read certain sports writers. If I open a paper up, there's always, you know, some I never read, and others I'll read every word of it. It's just what I fancy. I suppose that's why you buy a paper, isn't it? You're not forced to read it.
And what about the footballer who says he doesn't read the newspapers?
He won't have the ability to read, but I bet he cuts it all out and sticks it in his scrapbook. He mightn't read it, but...
Gibson remains a mysterious figure, his success secret sought by many in sport. Probably no one has ever quite figured him out. More than anything, he preaches simplicity. To succeed, he says, you must firstly do the simple things well. It's not a profound formula, but it remains a difficult message to get across. People keep searching for something deeper.
It's like a golfer looking for a tip, you know. I've caddied, so I was a caddy, and I've caddied for pros and that, and I think I know a fair bit about the problems in golf. But if somebody's doing a fundamental thing wrong and you tell them, they're not interested in that. They want some secret thing that nobody else knows. You know, they really look on, they don't want to know that. Well, I know that, but can you tell me something else? You know? They're looking for some solution that hasn't been invented yet.
Gibson has a love and a respect for most sports. As a spectator, he likes to experience the feeling of being involved.
I like to feel the tension of the player, you know, when there's a crucial area. You know, I can feel that. I think that's what I get the excitement out of, how trying to put myself in the position of the player. You know, in a crucial point or on a big game or the start of the finish. I think that's what sports does. I think the beauty of sport is that there's no sympathy in it. You don't care if the bloke you're playing against has got a defect. You know, while the game is on, that's part of it. And when it's over, there's no excuses. You know, all accolades to the winner. You know, that's how it should be. There's no prize in anything to run second. I mean, second, either you last. It's first or last, that's all.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear that you will faithfully...
The late President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was a committed football fan. This quote, taken from the book, sums up his feelings for the player. I sometimes wonder whether those of us who love football fully appreciate its great lessons. That dedication, discipline and teamwork are necessary to succeed. We take it for granted that the player will spare no sacrifice to become alert, strong and skilled, that they'll give their best on the field. This is as it should be, and we mustn't expect less, but I'm extremely anxious that its implications are not lost upon us. Its implications were not lost on Jack Gibson. He has a strong feeling for the competitor in football and in life. It's helped him earn the respect of those he's coached. Over the years, his players have come in all shapes and sizes. There's been the brilliance of Coote, Kenny, Sterling and Growth, the steadiness of Cronin, the craft of the giant Arthur Beetson. All of them at some stage have fulfilled a quality that Gibson seeks in his players. I look for a positive reaction from the players whose cubby house falls down during the game.
If they've had a poor game and can't admit it, you know, they're very tough to do anything with. If the kid's made some mistakes in the game and maybe it appears that it cost the team side a win, that he's got to be able to come back and fight through that. If he comes up with a fundamental mistake in the game, we don't want him to hide or start feigning about that. You know, so start grabbing his leg and making out he's had a muscle pull or he's lying down injured or some damn thing. He's positive. When he makes a mistake, we're looking for a positive reaction. You know, and then you forgive the mistake. And the other thing about the mistake is, Mike, that did it occur when he's trying to do something positive, or did the mistake occur when he's trying to do a negative thing? I mean, nothing he was trying to get out of. He was trying to hide and he come up with a mistake. Was he going to the action and made the mistake? Well, one's far easier to forgive than the other.
Jack also said you can win with all types of players except dumb ones.
It just makes it harder to win. You know, I don't want them playing for me. Irrespective if they're down a little in talent, but if they got a brain, you got a chance. But they've got to have that. You've got to have that. Doesn't matter what you're doing. I'm talking about a brain, not a big brain or a little brain. Somebody, what brains they got, they're using. That's all that's required. Some have got them there and they're dormant. They never let them come out.
The player, Jack says, has to motivate himself. There are certain things the players have to do alone, and motivation is one of them. It's a personal thing, and not all players can manage it, as Gibson discovered.
Motivation is self-motivation. You've got to give them the opportunity to do it. I can't motivate anybody, you know, but I can say, if you do this, these are your rewards, this is what will happen to you. You know, and if you don't, these are the negative things that can happen to you, and it's that left to the individual. You know, he's got to do it himself. The coach can't, really. The coach, he can only advise. The coaching job, that means you're teaching. You're teaching in the plus things and the minus things.
A common thread that runs through much of what Gibson says is be positive. And that means looking ahead to the next match, rather than looking back over the shoulder to the last one. As Gibson said, we don't care about last year. That's why we don't get them to bring their scrapbooks with them.
Well, we're worrying about what's going to happen. You know, we don't worry about what's happened down the road there a bit. We're not going to be, like, if we get beat on Sunday, we're not going to spend the following week worrying about why we got beat. How we got beat, we're going to try and take out of that defeat the good things. And there's good things in defeat. And we're going to try and make them work for us the following game.
Players like Peter Sterling and Arthur Beetson have immense respect for Jack Gibson. They were important players in Gibson's premiership years. He was important to them. The respect was mutual.
You know, the greatest thing I found about Jack Gibson was that he was more interested in you off the paddock than he was on, because I think he believes that if you're happy in your home life, your work environment, whatever you're doing, that'll come through in your game, and conversely, if you're not happy, then that will affect your game. So, you know, Jack, had a fair bit of interest in you off the paddock and made sure things were travelling okay for you.
There's no doubt about it. I was fortunate enough to play under Jack Gibson. He's certainly been a great coach, he's been a great mate, and he's a great human being, Jack Gibson.
Well, he certainly had a lot of influence on me as a player. I know for a fact that he created a situation with me where I became more disciplined in my play. I respected things a lot more, and I put values in a lot of things that maybe I didn't put values in prior to knowing Jack.
Jack's an uncompromising person. I think he's a bit of a touch at times, old Jack, there's no doubt about it. He might come as he has a tough exterior, but underneath that tough exterior, there's a heart of gold.
If it's the players who lead from the front in sport, it's the backroom boys, the committees, the boys from the boardroom who must carry the responsibilities for making things work. Whenever Gibson chose a new club, it was only after he looked at the quality of the backroom brigade. He didn't always agree with them and often seemed at loggerheads with officialdom. He remarked once, "I've never tried to win friends on committees. You know you can never please them all, so why bother trying?"
Well, you could add to that, if you want to slaughter a good idea, you hand it over to a committee. They'll really punch a few holes in it. Well, there's got to be some quality control in management. I think that's the first area, but yet they're talking about player quality control. I think management is the first thing. That's the area.
And for any aspiring young executive or even any young coach, it might be worthwhile to heed these words from Jack's book. The secret of managing a club is to keep the 5 guys who hate you away from the 5 who haven't made up their minds.
That's about it, because not all going to agree with you. They'll all agree when you win. But I mean, sport's not winning every Sunday, is it?
If the coach had the perfect formula, coaching would be strictly about winning every day. In the real world, it's not like that. Gibson, the realist, accepted that. And what he set out to do was to try and eliminate the things that led to defeat. For him, game day itself was emotional and tough. although he savoured the moments after a winning game. Coaching was a hobby, sometimes physically draining, but often richly enjoyable.
But that's the answer to all occupation. Irrespective if it's coaching or working in a factory, you really got to like what you're doing if you're going to work there somewhere around your potential. That's got to be there, irrespective if you're driving a taxi. You're doing anything. You're a jockey. You got to like that stuff you're doing.
A fact of coaching or teaching anything in life is that it's necessary to grab and to retain the interest of your subjects. Gibson said of coaching, the important thing is that you don't bore players. If they become mentally bored, then they become physically weak.
Well, we've got to involve them, Mike. You know, we've got to tell them everything. We've got a plan. We could give them a plan early, you know, so they can adjust their own lives as far as training is concerned. I never believed in putting on a crash training session or an extra one, unless I'd given them at least a week notice of that effect. You know, they've got to plan their life. I'd tell them what we're trying to do on Sunday and ask for them to report. Well, the ones that are bored with training, not really going to make it. They're cup of tea players. They'll be in and out of the joint within a half a season or a season. But I think the life expectancy of the player, the number of the games they ask them to get through. See, I value a player like a car. There's only so many miles left in it, and depending on how many games they play. So we've got players playing a full season here and going to England. Well, they're getting that's a lot of football games. Well, that's going to take a year off and further down the line. But then again, some got a longer life expectancy than others.
It's fairly certain that Jack Gibson would have made an excellent coach in other sports, and at different times he's felt the urge to help a struggling champion, like Aussie tennis star Pat Cash, or some of our young golfers.
Well, sometimes you do that. If you think you've got a little bit of a flair in that area, you seem to think, I wonder if he'd listen to me, this kid, because I'm sure I wouldn't make him any worse. You know, you think, oh, I wouldn't do him any harm. You see him by his actions that he's not allowing himself to play to his potential. And that bugs me a little bit. You see a good athlete and he's letting the minor hurts worry him. You know, he's making big issues about minor things. It really must take away from his ability. Must subtract, must take away from his performance. Everyone's looking for something that's really not there. It's the simple things that are going to get you home.
Jack Gibson has seen champions come and go, and he's been inspired by many. The parade of champions who've crossed his path is a long one, and Gibson finds it's no easy task to nominate the best. Jack had this to say on the subject.
Well, I probably had a lot of great players. Sterling probably stands out for game after game. Maybe he wasn't the most brilliant player, but for consistency, he'd win.
What about the toughest player you ever coached?
Well, I've never thought much about grading them on toughness. But to win anything, you've got to have a tough... The team's got to be tough, and that infiltrates into individuals, and then you've got to have a tough leader. Looking back, gee whiz, I can go right back 67. I had a great kid called Jimmy Matthews, who was captain at the time in that particular era, because he played to his ability every Sunday. And started looking at young Bunny Riley. He's gone from young to old since the last time I spoke about him. And then you get up towards Beatson and Coote and those people. You know, they're really confident individuals, I think there was toughness there.
What's the difference between toughness and dirtiness? Are tough players ever dirty?
No, but they're not dirty, but they'll play with the rules you give them. They'll play within that because the game's tough enough. You know, there's the opportunity to show your toughness, you know, not through the mouth or through a cheap shot. You know, it takes a far tougher individual to play with the rules they're given and to cheap shot somebody. You know, what happens eventually, those people, you know, they finish up chicking out themselves.
So the tough guys quite often are the blokes that take it rather than dish it out.
Well, it's not so much the taking it. When they do stop one, they don't complain. You know, but the ones that are looking for the cheap shot, they finish up looking over both shoulders.
Of all the sports people you've met and observed and watched and admired along the way, who's your favourite?
Well, recently, probably Kay Cotty, for what she done. And she just come out of the blue, no one ever heard of her, and got in a boat and risked her life for how many days, you know, how many hours, and accomplished that thing to sail around the world, the toughest trek there is, and get back on her own. You know, she certainly had a lot of fortitude and toughness there.
What about Wally Lewis? What makes him such a great captain?
Well, I'm not saying he's great, and I'm not saying he's poor either. I don't know if he's great or poor, but you seem to be able to win with him. So he's got to have a lot of, he's got to have something going for him in that angle. You know, I think he's got the ability to lead, you know, and for what he's done and the number of games he's played in, I tell you what, you've got to start thinking he could be great, or he is great.
What about your worst moment in football?
Well, it wasn't a moment, it was a week. When we got beat in the grand final, South beat us, when I coached St George. I really felt that I really felt for that. I really done that tough.
Why, did you think that you personally failed?
Well, I think that was it there. I thought that, you know, we worked all along. We had 3 teams in the grand final that particular year, and we failed with the 3 of them. We had an opportunity to win the football game. I think we were a point away with 5 or 6 minutes to go, and we had opportunities, and we didn't score. I think if I'd been as wise as I am now, not that I'm wise now, I think I might have won the football game. But then again, I didn't regret South's winning it to a point, because they were a championship side. We didn't get beat by a team of mugs. Well, the feel you get after winning a championship, you know, a particular game, it doesn't last that long. It probably fortifies your confidence. You need that. You start to think you'll never get beat. But you come back to earth pretty quick. I don't know if there's been a moment that really stands out. I can't remember what I done, even though I've been involved in coaching in 6 grand finals. I can't remember. The only thing that stands out was the loss. I expected to win.
Jack Gibson's public image is one of strength. He was seen for a time as a stern, unbending figure, but his increased media presence in recent years has awakened the public to the other side of Jack Gibson, to the sharp, dry humour of the man. Jack is a mixture, the toughest of disciplinarians with a soft side to his nature. He is a compulsive reader and learner and takes time out every day to read something new.
I came when I was in the bush and there's nothing else to do probably, and I worked in the country a little bit. I started to read a little. And I think that's where I always like to read, but I always like to read probably certain stories, you know, I like to read. Well, Mark Twain was certainly interesting to me, because he had some humour there. And he was always entertaining. But there was never an author that I really followed, I don't think. I'd read anything. Probably was making time to read.
And he's a lover of animals, with a special fondness for his pal, the German Shepherd named Taylor.
Well, he's pretty friendly. Yeah, I think he's accepted in the joint. The kids like him. I think my woman likes him, occasionally.
If there's one declaration in the book that sums up the qualities of the best of the sportsmen who've come under the Jack Gibson influence, it is perhaps this one, attributed to James J. Corbett, a great old-time American boxing heavyweight. He said, "Fight one more round. When your feet are so tired that you have to shuffle back to the centre of the ring, fight one more round. When your arms are so tired that you can hardly lift your hands to come on guard, fight one more round. When your nose is bleeding and your eyes are black and you're so tired that you wish your opponent would crack you one on the jaw and put you to sleep, fight one more round. Remembering that the man who always fights one more round is never whipped."